Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Intentions. This opening line establishes an emotional foundation for the entire anthem, expressing deep affection and belonging. The word hail suggests reverence and celebration, positioning Nigeria as worthy of honor and praise. Our own dear native land intensifies this sentiment. The possess of our own claimed collective ownership. Dear expresses genuine affection and value, while native land roots Nigerian identity in the soil itself, suggesting an organic, ancestral connection to place. The line imagines citizens who love their country deeply, who see Nigeria not as an administrative convenience or colonial imposition, but as genuinely theirs, cherished and irreplaceable. Reality, eyes. The migration patterns tell a story fundamentally at odds with deep attachment to native land. Nigerians are leaving their country in extraordinary numbers, seeking opportunities and security elsewhere. The brain drain encompasses every skill level and profession: doctors, nurses, engineers, teachers, IT professionals, and increasingly anyone with marketable skills. The destination countries span the globe: United Kingdom, United States, Canada, European nations, even other African countries perceived as more stable or prosperous. This is not temporary labor migration where workers send remittances home while planning eventual return. Increasingly, skilled Nigerians emigrate permanently, obtaining foreign citizenship and building lives elsewhere. The Japa phenomenon, Nigerian slang for fleeing the country, has become so pervasive it shapes popular culture and daily conversation. Young Nigerians discuss not whether to leave but when and how. Social media brims with advice about immigration pathways, visa processes, countries accepting Nigerian qualifications. Educational choices increasingly prioritize foreign degrees or credentials recognized internationally, with the explicit goal of facilitating immigration. Parents who can afford it send children abroad for secondary or university education, recognizing that foreign credentials open doors Nigerian degrees cannot. According to the International Organization for Migration, Nigeria witnessed remittances from overseas Nigerians going from $2.3 billion in 2004 to $17.9 billion in 2007, representing 6.7% of GDP. While this data is dated, the scale demonstrates how many Nigerians work abroad. The remittance flows continue to grow, now representing one of Nigeria's largest foreign exchange sources after oil. These billions flow from millions of Nigerians who found abroad what they could not find at home. The diaspora's relationship with Nigeria reveals complicated emotions. Many maintain strong cultural connections, send money to relatives, invest in property at home, and speak of eventual return. Yet behavior suggests otherwise. Nigerians who obtain foreign citizenship rarely relinquish it to return permanently. The diaspora communities in London, Houston, Toronto grow larger and more established with each passing year, developing their own institutions, businesses, and social networks. Second-generation Nigerians born abroad often identify more with their birth countries and their parents' homeland. Even those who remain in Nigeria increasingly express this affection. The criticism of the reinstated anthem itself revealed this starkly. When prominent Nigerians like activist Aisha Yusufu publicly refused to sing Nigeria, We Hail Thee, and former Minister Obieze Kwesili criticized as containing pejorative language, they were not merely disputing anthem choices but expressing deeper alienation. The controversy over the anthem's British authorship, lyrics written by Lillian Jean Williams, a British expatriate, touches on fundamental questions about Nigerian identity. How can citizens hail a native land when even the anthem expressing that sentiment was composed by a foreigner during colonial times? The separatist movements represent the most explicit rejection of our own dear native land. The indigenous people of Biafra don't seek to reform Nigeria or improve it. They seek to leave it entirely, establishing an independent Biafran state. The Yoruba Nation movement pursues an Adajua republic. These movements explicitly reject the premise that Nigeria is a native land, arguing instead that Biafra or Adajua or the Niger Delta are their true homelands, with Nigeria being an artificial colonial construct imposed upon them. The poverty rate of 63% means approximately 140 million people struggling to meet basic needs, which shapes how people relate to their country. When the native land cannot feed its children, when it offers violence instead of security, when it provides no path to dignity or prosperity, affection becomes difficult to sustain. The relationship becomes transactional at best, hostile at worst. The mismatch between hailing Nigeria and actually leaving it could hardly be more stark. If Nigeria were genuinely dear, if citizens felt deep attachment to their native land, they would stay and build it despite challenges. Instead, the pattern is flight. Those with skills and resources leave, while those remaining often express not affection but frustration, anger, or resignation. The billions in remittances represent not just economic flows but emotional distance. Money sent from abroad substitute for presence, for the contribution of talent and energy to national development. The separatist movements invert the anthem's premise entirely. Where the anthem declares Nigeria our own, separatists declare it theirs, meaning the dominant ethnic groups who they feel control and exploit the federation. Where the anthem claims Nigeria's native land, separatists argue their ethnic homelands, Igboland, Yorubaland, are their true native territories, with Nigeria being an artificial overlay. The very notion of a unified Nigerian native land is contested, with millions arguing that their ethnic or regional identity supersedes any Nigerian identity. The Japa phenomenon reveals that for many Nigerians, particularly young educated ones, the dear native land is not dear enough to stay for. Britain, America, Canada become more attractive than Nigeria because they offer what Nigeria does not: security, opportunity, functioning systems, meritocracy, rule of law. The irony is profound. Colonialism created Nigeria, and now descendants of colonizers' nations draw away Nigeria's best and brightest who seek in London or New York what Lagos or Abuja cannot provide. The anthem's emotional register, reverence, affection, belonging, sits uncomfortably against lived experience of insecurity, poverty, corruption, and dysfunction. How does one hail a country where fatality from terrorist attacks rose by 46% in 2025 to 750? How does one express affection for a native land where at least 402 people, mostly school children, were kidnapped across 4 states in November 2025? The emotional response such conditions generate is not reverence but fear, not affection but disappointment or rage. UNODC Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect. Even the phrase native land carries uncomfortable colonial echoes. Critics like Ibi Ezekwesili objected to native as a pejorative term used during colonialism to describe indigenous peoples in condescending ways. That such language persists in Nigeria's national anthem, written by a British expatriate in 1959, suggests the nation never fully decolonized its national identity, never developed an authentic Nigerian expression of patriotism separate from colonial frameworks. What this signals? The exodus of skilled Nigerians signals a profound failure of national development. When doctors trained in Nigerian expense practice in British hospitals, when engineers educated in Nigerian universities work for Canadian firms, Nigeria loses a return on its investment in human capital. This is not a brain drain driven by adventure or curiosity, but by desperation. People leave because staying offers no viable future. It signals that Nigeria's problems are not temporary setbacks, but structural conditions making the country unlivable for those with options. The growth and permanence of diaspora communities signals that emigration increasingly means permanent departure rather than temporary sojourn. When Nigerians establish businesses abroad, when they obtain foreign citizenship, when they raise children who identify as British Nigerian or American Nigerian, but increasingly just British or American, it represents permanent loss of human capital. The fact that even diaspora Nigerians who love Nigerian culture, send money home, and speak of their heritage do not actually return permanently signals that affection has limits. You can love Nigeria from London while recognizing London is better to live in. The separatist movement signaled the incompleteness of Nigerian nation building. 66 years after independence, significant populations still don't accept Nigeria as their native land, still see it as a colonial imposition they'd rather dissolve. This is not fringe sentiment. IPOB draws substantial support among Igbos. Yoruba separatism has significant sympathy. Niger Delta militancy reflects genuine grievances. The persistence and growth of these movements signals that the Nigerian project never achieved the emotional legitimacy required for stable nationhood. The poverty and insecurity shaping citizen experience signal state failure at the most basic level. Before anyone can develop affection for their country, the country must enable life worth living. When the native land is synonymous with hunger, unemployment, violence, and hopelessness, it becomes impossible to sustain the emotional attachment the anthem assumes. The state has failed to create conditions where patriotism can flourish organically. The controversy over the anthem's authorship signals unresolved questions about Nigerian identity. That in 2024, nearly 65 years after independence, Nigeria reinstated an anthem written by a British colonizer reveals either nostalgia for colonial-era order or inability to forge authentic post-colonial national symbols. The fact that prominent Nigerians objected and refused to sing it signals that even basic national symbols lack consensus, that there is no shared sense of what Nigeria is or should be. Viable solutions. Creating genuine affection for Nigeria's native land requires making Nigeria actually livable and worthy of that affection. This is not about propaganda or patriotic education, but about material transformation. When Nigeria provides security so parents don't fear their children will be kidnapped from school, when economic opportunity exists so young people can build futures at home, when systems function so citizens can access healthcare, justice, and services, then affection becomes possible. Patriotism cannot be demanded. It must be earned through performance. Addressing brain drain requires understanding why people leave. Exit interviews with emigrating professionals consistently cite insecurity, lack of opportunity, dysfunctional systems, and corruption. Creating conditions that compete with foreign opportunities means building an economy that rewards merit, infrastructure that functions, security that protects, and governance that serves rather than exploits. Some countries retain talent through better salaries, but Nigeria's challenge is deeper. It's not just about pay, but about whether life is possible with dignity and hope. Diaspora engagement could transform from loss to asset if approached strategically. Rather than viewing immigration as betrayal, Nigeria could build structures enabling diaspora contribution while living abroad. Dual citizenship recognition, already permitted, diaspora voting rights, investment incentives, professional exchange programs. These allow diaspora Nigerians to contribute skills and capital without requiring permanent return. Israel and India have successfully engaged diasporas as development partners. Nigeria could do the same. For separatist movements, the solutions require confronting legitimate grievances rather than military suppression. When Igbos feel politically marginalized or economically excluded, when Yorubas feel their region supports others without reciprocity, when Niger Deltans see environmental devastation without benefit, these are political problems requiring political solutions. Constitutional restructuring, through federalism, equitable resource distribution, regional autonomy, these address root causes rather than symptoms. Making Nigeria worth staying in requires making all regions and ethnic groups feel the federation serves their interests. Cultural decolonization could help forge authentic Nigerian identity separate from colonial frameworks. This might mean new national symbols, anthem, flag, motto, created through genuine national dialogue reflecting contemporary Nigerian values. It could mean education curricula that teach Nigerian history from Nigerian perspectives, that celebrate Nigerian achievements, that acknowledge colonial harms without being defined by them. Building pride in Nigerian identity requires having Nigerian identity worth pride, not borrowed colonial forms but authentic expressions of who Nigerians are and aspire to be. Economic transformation enabling widespread prosperity would fundamentally alter relationships to the native land. When the native land feeds you, employs you, protects you, enables your children's future, it becomes genuinely day. This requires the economic diversification, job creation, infrastructure development, and equitable growth discussed in previous analyses. But it also requires ensuring that economic growth reaches citizens rather than enriching only elites. Inclusive growth where prosperity is widely shared creates a material foundation for patriotism. Ultimately, making Nigeria our own dear native land in reality rather than rhetoric requires building a nation that citizens choose to stay in, that they defend and develop because it serves their interests and embodies their values. This cannot be achieved through anthems or flags or patriotic slogans. It requires governance that works, economy that provides, security that protects, and justice that prevails. When these exist, affection follows naturally. Without them, no amount of anthem singing generates the belonging the words describe.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear nation.